Alrighty, lads. It is Freed 700. We are back with Could Someone Survive Warhammer? This time the question is, could Shepard from Mass Effect series survive Warhammer? Well, what we're going to do in this scenario is actually very different. You see, we're going to be looking at Shepard as he is in Mass Effect, but then we're going to also look at a scenario, what if he was just born in the Warhammer world? See, these are very different questions, and we're going to dive into it equally. So, let's first start off with who Shepard is. What are his core traits? What has he achieved in his life? What are his capabilities? What's his background? Let's talk about that for those of you who do not know. And just so that way we can clarify with fans who are a fan of Mass Effect series why Shepard would survive or why he wouldn't and what would happen in these scenarios. So, let's begin. Okay, so let's start with the backstory. What's the background of Commander Shepard? Well, that's actually optional. You can choose 3 options. The first one is Earthborn. You see that Shepard was born on the streets, and the only way he could really live is either by turning to crime or by joining the military. That is literally it. That's the only options he had. As an orphan with nobody to lean on, that is it. So Shepard decides to join the military instead. A very smart option, but it does become apparent that Shepard did do a little bit of crime when he was younger. Like, he was a part of a gang at one point. Because if you choose the Earthborn option, there's actually a point where one of your gang members from Earth is on the Citadel and you can help them out, which is very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed that Shepard still has some ties with the gang. The second option is Spacer. Shepard was born in space on a ship, and his whole parents' lineage is through the military, the Alliance military. Here he spends very, very few years actually on a planet, and most of the time he's just bouncing from one ship to another, one location of the galaxy to another, and he just decides to follow his parents' footsteps into the military. The next option, the last one thankfully, is Colonist, where what happens is Shepard was born on pretty much the verge, the near end of the borders of the Alliance as a colony, and at one point his family and friends are just completely slaughtered by alien slavers, but he was saved by a passing military patrol, and then a few years later he joins the military. This is roughly around the age of 16 to 18 years old he does this. That is his background. Now, those 3 options is not it. Believe it or not, there's another 3 options. So you get a total of 6 options that can converge into 18 choices or something like that if you do the combinations. I'm not good at math. We're not here to talk about math. So, once he's in the military, you have another 3 choices as to what happened in his career. Here you could choose Ruthless, where throughout his military career, he held fast to one basic rule, which is just get the job done. No matter how many people die, doesn't matter. All that matters is the efficiency that he can use his men. Can he make one man go into a base and blow up the entire base at the cost of just one man? If he could, he would. But if it takes 20 men, that's just a number. We're just going to throw those guys in there. This is actually something that's very interesting because it does reflect on his history where he sent many, many, many people to their deaths on one of the military excursions he was a part of. But that does actually help quite a bit with the setting he's now dropped into, which is Warhammer 40k. The next one is called War Hero. This one's the good guy option. Essentially what happens is, during his military career, he faces near impossible odds, and he's fighting an enemy force that's just overwhelming his position. Well, instead of turning tail and run, instead he risks his life and fights the enemies almost one-on-one. And by doing so, he actually took most of the brunt of the force, ensuring to protect his own fellow soldiers. See, it's the opposite. He even gets a medal for this, for having the highest honor achievable by protecting his own fellow Marines and taking on more danger than he even had to. If he just followed orders, he didn't have to put himself at risk. But because he has such a high morale standard, and because he's so combat efficient, he was able to handle way more than anyone else could chew. The last option, which is very interesting, I actually find this one very funny, is called the Sole Survivor. Him and his team is sent on a mission that goes extremely wrong. He gets trapped in a terrible survival situation where a bunch of monsters called Thresher Maws, kind of imagine Tremors, but 20 times bigger and much deadlier. That's what the Thresher Maws are. They rise out of the ground, they just annihilate his entire squad. This puts him under extreme stress and extreme survival to kick in, with extreme military prowess to maintain his bearing and to maintain his profession. But somehow he made it out alive by himself against nothing but just a giant behemoths that live underground. They're coming out, spraying acid that melts vehicles, it melts tanks to shreds. And here they are rising out, annihilating his squad, and somehow he comes out alive. That's the Sole Survivor one. Yeah, that's quite a legendary career. Now, we're not done with his career, by the way. This is just the background. This is just what he's been through. We spent 6 minutes talking about his background alone. We haven't even talked about Warhammer at all. So, when it comes to his later achievements in his military career, he becomes the first ever human Spectre. Now, this is actually very interesting because a Spectre is a person that is capable of extraordinary feats by themselves, regardless of military standing, regardless of training, regardless of anything related to their own personal life, regardless of their wealth, regardless of their renown, nothing. All that matters to become a Spectre is your extraordinary ability to make the impossible possible, the ability to change odds, the ability to turn whole tides of wars. They are the first and last line of defense for the Federation known as the Council. This is very interesting because just that description alone perfectly fits Shepard. He, by himself, with his guns, with his own macho, he could turn the tide of any battle. We've seen it in his background. The 3 backgrounds I just told you about his military service, every single one of them, he turns the tide of war, whether it's through his calculating ruthlessness, whether it's through just his sheer fucking personal grit, where he could just survive behemoths attacking him, or even just him being a great hero where he charges out into sure death and somehow emerges okay only because he knew he was going to protect his fellow men who probably would not survive the same treatment. This is a legendary individual indeed. So how does this all fit into Warhammer 40k? Well, you see, Warhammer 40k is a very dangerous environment indeed, and being an exceptional military individual definitely helps a lot. So, let's talk about what would happen if Shepard could survive 40k if we just teleported him in somehow, some way, the way he is right now. So, in other words, just him, with his armor, with his guns, whatever bullshit abilities he's got from, biotics or engineer or blah, blah, blah. Let's talk about that first, because it's actually very interesting. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, and it's actually kind of interesting when you really, really think it out. Now, you see, when it comes to living in the galaxy, the only real way that he would ever be teleported in would probably be in the Imperium. Now, you may think, well, what about Chaos? What about Orcs? What about whatever? Listen, we're trying to give him the best survival odds possible, okay? Now, you may think it's the Imperium. It's actually not. It's just that the Imperium owns majority of the galaxy, so it does make sense that he would teleport probably somewhere in the Imperium. Now, the problem is that the Imperium would openly kill him for a lot of reasons. And you may think, what? Why would they kill a human? Why would they do that? Especially when he fights for humanity in Mass Effect. Why would they kill him on sight? Well, you see, there's a lot of issues with Shepard that we didn't even talk about. Or there's a lot of issues with Shepard's universe that we did not talk about. You see, Shepard's weapons and armor are technologically advanced. Extremely so. And they're so extremely technologically advanced that when you put them in Warhammer 40k, they would declare it as tech heresy. Worse, they would actually consider it abominable intelligence. They may wonder, why is that? Well, it's stated in the codexes of Mass Effect that just about every single piece of armor, every single weapon has its own internal computers, its own internal VIs even. And these help navigate things like trajectory, also how an armor should work. Like, his armor actually heals the user. Anytime that there's a puncture or a breach, anytime there's a gunshot wound, the armor floods itself with metagel. Again, metagel is a very interesting topic as well because it melds DNA together. Again, very heretical shit. This is like, whoa. This is scientific, but to the Mechanicus, this is considered abominable intelligence, even though it's a virtual intelligence. The thing is that they would not know the difference. This is a machine that operates without a soul. This is a machine that operates with no machine spirit at all. This is totally weird to the Imperium, who relies on these machine spirits. And here's this guy who walks with technology like the fucking Tau, where it's all based on computers and understanding and knowledge. This would not be accepted at all. And his guns would be viewed as extremely deadly, so he would be a threat to begin with, regardless. No matter what, he would be a threat right off the get-go. The thing is, too, is that Shepard is extremely strong as an individual and extremely strong in a personality sense. So the issue with Shepard would probably be that here he is in a fanatical universe, a very radical area where religion is very important, understanding is not important at all, human rights are fucking abysmal. This is a terrible society to live in. Shepard is a very influential guy. He's a very type A personality. He would just charge in, start taking control. That I have no doubt. Whether it's because he's a good guy, whether because he's a bad guy, whether because he's neutral, it doesn't matter. Here we see something that's completely broken and wrong in a society. He's going to start taking control the only way he knows how. Point a gun at things and start shooting. I'm not joking. That's literally the way a lot of his companions view him, is that anytime you want something done, you just start pointing your gun and start shooting. And honestly, when you play the games, that really does kind of come off how it feels. You could talk your way through things, but really, Shepard just kind of gets the party started and just starts blasting. But he is quite persuasive when he chooses to be. And that's something I find very interesting, is that he could probably cause a rebellion on an Imperial world. He could probably lead a successful rebellion, pushing the Imperium back with his knowledge of military strategies, with the way he operates himself. He's a very competent person, a very competent commander as well. The issue is that the Imperium is not above destroying their own planets. The Imperium is too big to be fucked with. And sure, he may actually secede a planet. I have no doubt that with his special ops training, he could obviously put together a team, get an Ogren as like a bodyguard like Rex, find a psyker who's not sanctioned and utilize their abilities for his own gain. And he could probably form a team and then figure out some of the technology and some of the way it works, where he could assign his own drop ship and just drop on in different hive cities, take over areas using very interesting squad tactics that he knows from his universe. Because you have to remember, despite how advanced Warhammer 40k is, some of their strategies are a little bad. A little bad is one way to put it. So, with Shepard using small unit tactics instead of massive blobs of troops who just get all fucking destroyed in one single artillery bombardment, and by utilizing special ops formations and special ops strategies, he could easily dismantle some planetary governors who lack some understanding of even more basic army strategies. There was one individual that I can think of who actually ordered enough bombs and artillery shells to basically artillery barrage half the planet. This is like the Siege of Rocks, if I recall. And that's how bad of a commander he was. that it was a logistical nightmare. It costed more resources to capture the planet than the planet was even worth. You could break this planet down into the very molecules, the atoms, and it would not be worth that much artillery shells. But because he was such a bad commander, he just said artillery goes brrr. This is the kind of shit the Commander Shepard would be up against, and I have no doubt he would be very competent and would secure a victory in taking over the planet. The problem is that I think that's where his line ends. Great, you seceded a planet, but now what? Shepard doesn't know what to do about society. Shepard doesn't know, like, what chaos is. He doesn't understand religion. He doesn't understand that religious freedom in 40K is actually a bad thing. Here he is preaching understanding and, millennial ideals like, hey man, it's okay that people are just a little different. It's okay that the abhuman is just a little strange and has tusks. It's okay if this guy worships some blood god. It's fine as long as he doesn't do anything about it. No, in 40K these have serious meanings. So that's why I think that if he was in 40K and he did secede a planet, that'd probably be the end of the line. He'd probably encounter a lot of issues that he doesn't quite fully grasp about the universe that he's in. Here it is, these super deadly things like gods, chaos, and then you have other aliens as well. What happens if orcs crash on his planet? He may try to talk to the war bosses, and then he may use his special ops training to, dismount the leader, but dismounting a leader doesn't solve your threat. That's a temporary issue. All it does is it pushes the orcs back. Another war boss rises up, this time stronger than the last one. Okay, assassinate him too. Okay, orcs are pushed back. They're dismantled. They're fighting each other again. Now they're going to reform again, but this time with an even stronger war boss. This is the way the orcs work. And again, this ties into Shepard. He doesn't understand the universe. So if he did secede a plan, did take control, he would have issues. And that's where I could see him dying ultimately, is either from old age or from just being unable to understand the universe he's in and dying from an alien or dying from chaos, dying from something that is different. Now, you may say, well, for 700, why doesn't Shepard just join chaos? Well, the thing is that Shepard's not fanatical, and he's understanding and knowledgeable just like we are. So he would see these religious fanatics and he would say, whoa, dude, you're just a crazy zealot. And mind you, Shepard's dealt with crazy zealots. In literally Mass Effect 1, there are many, 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 many cults that Shepard puts down that are a bunch of biotics, which is like psychers. But he puts them down because he says, you're just crazy zealots. What the fuck is wrong with you? You guys are just crazy and zealous. There's nothing good about being zealous at all. Now, imagine that in 40K, where it actually is very common to be zealous about your religion. Shepard would not like that. And he would not succumb to chaos no matter what power they flaunt in his face. It would not work. Because he believes in a few things. He believes in people having lives, people choosing who they want to be. There's a few things that he does seem to believe in, whether he's a good guy or bad guy. This does not settle well with Chaos Gods. This doesn't settle well with the Imperium of Man. Doesn't settle well with the Tau either. Tau is going to be a topic that I can definitely talk about right now. Let's say Shepard was teleported in and he decided to flee the Imperium of Man because they are just too crazy, too deadly, and it would cause more lives than it would saving them. So he decides to leave. If he was able to figure out transportation somehow and figure out that there's an alien race, they're actually decent people, I think the issue with the Tau would be actually very interesting because it's more of a societal thing. You have to remember what I just said. Shepard comes from a time of understanding. He comes from a universe where knowledge and discussion and diplomacy come into fact. So the Eldar and the Tau do sound like a prospect that he could flee to because they are understanding, they can talk and be diplomatic. The problem is that if they accept Shepard into their ranks, they would put him in the civilian life. Now, Shepard, as we know him, he's a very type A kind of personality. He likes to take in charge, take control. He also doesn't really suit civilian life. Believe it or not, in Mass Effect 3, when Shepard's lamenting his life and he's chilling with his companions, all of them are all buddies, and he's talking to them. He's like, I cannot imagine civilian life. Like, he talks about it, opening up a bar somewhere, maybe having a life with a few children, but to him, that's like the end of my life. That's when I get old and die, which again is kind of more of a man thing. That's not really a Shepard thing. It's more of just being an old man, I guess, where you view settling down as just dying. But you also see a Shepard doesn't like that. He really just doesn't like that. He craves action. He craves intrigue. He craves work, essentially. And being a civilian in the Tau or the Eldar societies and just being reduced to that, where you're only going to do one job and that is it. There's no society at all for you to climb. There's no rank or structure for him to join. That would not be good. The Eldar wouldn't accept him in a military because, well, they're Eldar. They use advanced weaponry. They don't do stand-up fights, which is fine for Shepard. He doesn't do stand-up fights either. He's more of a run-and-gun kind of guy. He's a special ops, after all. But the Eldar would never do that. Use a human to use their weaponry, their armor. They never do that. The Tau, on the other hand, do. But the issue with the Tau is that they do not use humans more than just auxiliary. In other words, you are their backup forces. You are the force that is more or less cannon fodder for them. You can still pack a punch. You can still do a number on the enemy. But there is no special ops for humans. There is no advancement in the ranks to become a general. There's none of that. There is none of that to be a Shas-O of the Fire Warriors. There is no Fire Warrior human. They are only a Gwevesa, which means human helper, and that is it. They cannot be more than that. So that wouldn't settle well with Shepard. And in fact, I could also see it too where the Tau could potentially reject him. They could say, that's great, you want to join our society, but we might not like you because Shepard's personality again. He's very influential. It's hard to put him in society and tell him, know your place, human. No, he may revolt. He may say, I believe in democracy. I believe that everyone should have a right to say so-and-so. And while the Tau may say, yeah, we will give you some rights. Of course, you have human rights. You'll be treated decently. You'll have a happy life. But only one that we assign you. That will be the issue. And I could easily see him rebel-rousing, especially if he's a more ruthless Shepard. He could easily rebel-rouse and instigate some pro-Imperial forces to join his side and rebel. It could be a nasty ordeal. So that's why I think the Tau could also look at him and say, you're really great. The Imperium wants you dead. You're everything we like, but we don't like your mentality, so you're never coming into our borders, ever. Because it's a risk. Never do the Tau want to use Fire Warriors or any sort of military intervention to settle a civil dispute. And that civil dispute could be people not liking the way they're being treated. In other words, being Gwella, which, again, in Tau society, you do not want to be a Gwella. As a human, you want to be a Gwevesa, a human helper. That is it. So I could easily see Shepard being a bit of a problem. So now let's talk about the other side. In equal depth, what if Shepard was born in Warhammer 40k? That is another story entirely. Now, this I think is the best hope for Shepard, to climb the ranks and actually contribute to Warhammer as a whole reality, as a galaxy. He could probably make some huge changes just in this scenario alone. He could probably change it for the worse or for the better, or just change it, and who knows if it's per se a benefit or a downside. Hey, he can always be just neutral and just change shit for no reason. So, what if Shepard was born in this universe? Now, that's interesting. Now, most of his backgrounds include being an orphan, whether it's through his family dying to aliens or being one of the many, many, many thousands born on Terra who lost their family and had a choice of crime, but to escape through it by joining the military. And then his last background is being a descendant of military personnel. Either way, these all lead down the same road. Eventually, he would join the Scala Progenium. Now, you may wonder, how did he join the Scala Progenium if he was in the military, blah, blah. Well, usually the Scala Progenium chooses a handful of cadets who are extremely well put in the military while they're training as guardsmen and such. But also, interestingly enough, there has been some rumors of kidnapping of dead parents who used to be in the military, of their children just being swept into the service of the Scala progenium, and then they're just tell the parents, oh yeah, your kid died, or oh yeah, your kid's missing, we don't know where he's at. I believe that rumor is probably true, because there has been a few times where like a noble's house or a noble's castle has been destroyed in an attack, and all of a sudden their third son is missing, and nowhere on the attackers' reports do they say that they killed him, but yet somehow he's gone. It's like, okay, someone swooped in and took him, but who, you know? So either way, all down these roads, Shepard as an individual would shine, and he'd be like a huge beacon for the Scala Progenium to go, wait, this kid is pretty good. And mind you, in the Imperium, you could join as a kid, not have to wait to be full-fledged adult. So, hey, that's great, especially if he's kidnapped. And the Scala usually takes kids from 8 to 12 years old, and Shepard, at his very core, is an extraordinary person. That's what makes him a Spectre in his universe. This is what's going to set him apart if he was born in Warhammer, is that he's going to be exceptional right from the get-go. Everyone's going to say, wow, this kid's got potential. He could be somebody. So they're going to take him into the Scala, and they're going to train him. They're going to show him how to do airdrop maneuvers, reconnaissance. They're going to basically teach him all the academics related to military affairs. They will turn him into a great leader with great combat skills to boot. And of this, when he finally graduates, or in the middle of his training, he's going to have 3 options presented to him in the Imperium. Those 3 options are: he could become a stormtrooper. Many who graduate become very elite guardsmen known as stormtroopers. Stormtroopers are badass. They do seek and destroy missions, airdrops from the fucking orbit, reconnaissance, parachuting, you name it, they do it. They are the special ops. They are just like the N7 program that we were talking about earlier. Allowed access to extraordinary gear and allowed access to extraordinary armors. They still operate in their own squads to / private armies. But with the training and with the gear, I think Shepard could do great in this. Especially if he was a war hero. If he was a good guy. If he was a good guy, he could easily rise the ranks of a stormtrooper and do this really interesting thing where he could probably even rise to a legendary status known as a Tempestor Prime. Tempestor Prime in the Stormtroopers is a rank that says you were legendary, that you're heroic in your feats. And I could so see him being a great Stormtrooper, seeing him charge in, protecting his fellow Stormtroopers, taking the brunt of an enemy's assault when he didn't have to, just because he knew it would spare human lives and that of his own allies. Meanwhile, he's spraying hot shot las gunfire at the enemy. This could definitely be a great Shepard. A Shepard who wears thick combat armor, charges in, gets stuck in the mud with the enemy, and rises. Using, again, special ops training, special ops gear, he could definitely rise. The next one is the Commissar. Commissar is interesting because I could see him doing this in just about a few spectrums. Mostly neutral. I could definitely see it being neutral. Now, the reason why you may think why neutral and not evil, we're going to get into that. You see, a neutral Commissar of Commander Shepard would be very interesting because he can mold himself to be in between the lines. Kind of like Caiaphas Cain, I would say. On one hand, he doesn't mind executing a few troops who are just simply stating their opinions. But on the other hand, he will do a few good deeds like leading these troops into battle and taking on more damage than he really had to ensure that their lives are safe and effective for his next order. This is what I could see definitely happening with a more neutral Shepard. The reason why a good guy Shepard wouldn't really work out is because a good guy Commissar doesn't usually last long in the Scala, and usually they get weeded out pretty easily. Because the point of a commissar is to maintain order and discipline, maintain military efficiency of any unit that they are assigned. And if you're a goody-goody two-shoes, you're not going to be strict enough to pass as a commissar. You may not even be strict enough to even live through their training. As a cadet commissar, the senior commissar watching over you may just put you out of your misery saying, dude, you're way too nice. You're not going to make it. Let me make it easier for you, and just put your ass down. So as a neutral character, he could ride between the lines. He can go, okay, I'll help out these people. I'll organize military rations to be given to these refugees. But in exchange, I expect those refugees to give me their children so I can train them to become soldiers 18 years from now. I could see him doing this, being a neutral individual and rising through the commissar ranks and even possibly achieving lord status. A lord commissar, we have not seen those in a bit, but a lord commissar would be a very legendary feat where he could pretty much command an entire planet's worth. Very interesting idea. Now the last one is one that I find the most intriguing. The renegade option. What would be an evil Shepard's choice? If he doesn't get into commissar, well, his exceptional stratagems, his exceptional skills, and what he was known for in the Mass Effect universe, if he was born in 40K, trained in the Scala, still an exceptional individual who can use his own intuition, his own smarts, he could be an Inquisitor. He could be an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, to be exact. They may wonder why that order in particular. Why not Ordo Hereticus or Ordo Daemonicus? Like, why not the other Ordos? Why specifically the Ordo Xenos? Well, when you play Mass Effect 1, the very beginning of the series, and you play as evil Shepard, he's actually a bit racist to aliens. He's more of a pro-humanity kind of guy. Even at the ending, the evil option is to say, fuck the aliens, let them die, human lives matter more. Despite the fact that he has alien coworkers, alien teammates, and you could even have sex with one of them. This, to me, screams Commander Shepard. A deep hatred and a deep bigotry, but he doesn't let it rise to the surface. And by using his exceptional intelligence and prowess, he could easily land on a planet, establish a network through his influence and, his attitude of getting shit done, just charging in, start fixing problems, establish allies and contacts, and he could break down maybe a gene stealer cult, maybe discover another cult entirely that's heretical, or just, lay down to smack down a bunch of renegade rebels. But he is not really that deeply religious, and that's something that's very interesting. That's the reason why I don't think he could be the other Ordos. He's not deeply fanatical. He's not deeply religious. Now, that could be part of the universe he's part of, or it could just be because that's just the way he is. In fact, in Mass Effect 1, when one of your allies comes out as being Catholic or Christian, you can actually tell her, nah, get that shit the fuck up out of my ship. I don't need some dumbass on my ship. She still stays with you, but she's very displeased that you're not religious and that you're so hostile to her religion. And that's the bad guy option. So if he's a bad guy, I could see him still being like that, where he's more cold, calculating, ruthless, and will just execute a hostage and just tell the person who's holding hostages, saying, dude, hostages only matter if the person you're talking to cares about them. I don't care about hostages. Fuck your hostages. And he just starts killing hostages. I could see him being a great Inquisitor. I could definitely see him being a great Ordo Xenos Inquisitor. I could even see him being radical of an Inquisitor. Because again, he's not that very religious. So here he is, a not very religious Shepard, very evil, working to undermine aliens by employing aliens. Boom. That would be amazing. To see a Commander Shepard establishing influence, establishing contacts with like Tau allies, crew allies, orc allies, and by using some of these crew members, using some of these allies, he's able to get an inside view of what's going on. Like, oh, there's a little bit of a Guela problem and Guevesa problem on one of the Tau worlds, and one of my Tau teammates is very concerned about it. Time to backstab him, shoot him in the back, or somehow convince him that this is for the better of the Tau, because by losing a world, they'll now actually care about their human relations. But more likely, he'll just shoot the Tau ally in the back and go, we worked together for a long time, and then shoot him in the back and say, okay, Imperium, let's swoop in on this planet, manipulate the civil rights problem, take these humans back into our fold. From there, you can just slaughter them. I don't care. But at least we get the world back quick and clean. Or you can also have an ally orc in his crew and just keep telling him, you could really be something. You could be a war boss if you want to. And then just drop him off on an orc and go, yeah, become an orc war boss. And while the two are fighting, the war boss and his own and recruited mercenary orc, he could just snipe and take out the orc war boss for his weaker orc, so that way he could take over and just watch as the camp just loses its order, loses its discipline. They just break into individual tribes again. And now his pathetic companion just gets absolutely butchered by another stronger orc, but at least the main threat is dealt with because he assassinated so-and-so. I could easily see a renegade Shepard working well like this. It even leaves the option for him to become a good guy Shepard at one point, because after many, many years working closely with the Tau, working closely with any Eldar species, blah, 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 it still gives him a gateway where he could say, you know what, I'm going to hang up the robes and the daggery. I want to convert to become a good guy now, if he ever so choose, and decide to immigrate himself into an Eldar society as just another human to add to be taken care of, or to immigrate into the Tau society and give them valuable insight into the Imperium that he's learned from all the knowledge he's gained. But that's what I think would be the most interesting Shepard out of them all. Maybe it's because I'm a terrible person myself. I'm a bit of a ruthless individual. But I could definitely see this being a very interesting series of intrigue and backstabbing. Is this Shepard who charges into alien worlds, helps out a few aliens, establish a few contacts, but really he's actually trying to gauge their strength. He's really trying to gauge their issues. And you'll see him executing a few people that he knows are influential just because ultimately it would make the planet weaker for the Imperium to just swoop in and take over. This would be a very interesting Inquisitor indeed. So, besides that, has been Free 700. I am out. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time. Subscribe if you want to see more. Peace.